folks. Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. Well, after, nearly 14 months of fighting, by the way, which was provoked unilaterally by Hezbollah, 14 months nearly of fighting between Israel and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and in northern Israel. We have a ceasefire ready to take effect in just a few hours, 4 a.m. Israel and Lebanon time. What do you think? Let's just lay down the gauntlet, folks, right out of the gate. What do you think? Now, the Israeli Security Cabinet approved this ceasefire by a count of 10-1. Only one person voted against it. But what do you think? That was 10-1, 11 people. We've got over 1 million people here on the Watchman YouTube channel. So I'd love to get your thoughts on it. We've got the most educated audience on YouTube, I like to say, people who really get the Middle East and the spiritual implications of everything unfolding there. So let's start with that in the chat. Let me know what you think. Good thing or a bad thing, this ceasefire? I think, and we'll break this down, but I think, number one, Israel is saying, okay, Donald Trump has made clear that he wants a ceasefire in Lebanon. He wants Israel, he's not just willy-nilly saying ceasefire at all costs like Joe Biden's been doing, like Biden was doing months ago. Biden didn't want Israel to invade Lebanon in the first place and deal with Hezbollah, but we'll get into that more. Biden saying ceasefire no matter what, no matter how strong Hezbollah is, no matter if Hezbollah is alive to fight another day, Israel kick the can down the road and just ceasefire now. Same with Gaza. Well, that's not wise, and thank God Israel did not heed that very unwise counsel by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But what Israel has done, number one, it's made great strides and accomplishments in southern Lebanon, but Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump have been talking. And I assume Donald Trump is saying, look, I'd love a clean slate when I enter office. If you can, he's not mandating this to Bibi, but he's saying, do what you need to do. We'd love to see you attain a decisive victory against Hezbollah, but we'd love you to do it in the next 2 months. Same with Hamas in Gaza. So that was the situation. And some have said, look, maybe this is a gift of sorts from Bibi to Trump so that Trump doesn't take office in the midst of a Middle East war. Interesting. Not quite clear if that's true or not, or if that was the overriding consideration here for Israel. I think but it's certainly a consideration, no doubt. You got a new friendly keyword there, administration coming into office. So Israel was, obviously weighing that. And obviously they're saying, look, we have a much better chance of getting off on the right foot with the new Trump administration if we're not in the middle of a major war in the north in Lebanon. Okay, that's one line of thinking. The other line of thinking, if you're Israel, and we discussed this a few weeks ago with Jonathan Conricus, the former spokesperson for the Israel Defense Forces. He was here on set with us on the Stakelbeck Tonight Show. The other line of thinking is, if you're Israel, what more can you accomplish? Israel has wiped out Hezbollah's entire leadership, from Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah to Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah's replacements, to the entire elite Radwan force, to various high-level commanders, mid-level commanders. Hezbollah is in disarray, and its rocket stockpiles decimated, rocket launchers decimated, its terror tunnel network along the Israel-Lebanon border destroyed. And at the same time, the IDF was losing soldiers, not a large amount of soldiers, but if you're Israel in particular, a tiny country, every casualty hurts even more. All casualties are bad, but every death, every tragic casualty of Israeli soldiers or civilians, because look, Hezbollah, although they've been severely weakened, still has a capability to launch a few hundred rockets a day into Israel. Not 3,000 like was initially feared, but even a few hundred is very bad. So Israel's weighing the cost and the benefit, I guess you would say, folks, where they're saying, okay, Hezbollah will never be the same. And I'm going to quote from Benjamin Netanyahu directly in a second. We've just struck heavy blows against Hezbollah. And I'm giving you, this is their line of thinking, I believe, the Israeli government in agreeing to this. They're saying, okay, we've dealt massive blows. Hezbollah will never be the same. It's a shell, still dangerous, but it's a shell of what it was. And then there's the possibility of, okay, if things calm down a bit in the north, number one, first and foremost, the residents of northern Israel, the some 70,000 residents who've been evacuated over the past 13 months plus, can finally return home. And also, maybe it makes it more likely for something in Gaza where Hamas hands over the hostages and you can have a treaty there somehow, because that's the only way that's happening. If Hamas hands over close to 100, if not a little bit more, hostages, now only about half of them are still alive. They've got the remains of roughly half. Hand over the hostages, and then there could be potentially a deal. If not, it's a non-starter. And perhaps something in Lebanon makes Gaza peace and a ceasefire there more likely. And the main thing there is the return of the hostages. I can't stress enough. This is the potential line of thinking, I think, in Jerusalem right now. And of course, the third factor, and we talked about this a minute ago, Donald Trump and getting off to the right foot with that new administration, because Trump is going to have a very bold vision for the Middle East. And first and foremost, I believe the Abraham Accords and Saudi Arabia and Israel and a treaty there, folks. It's back on the table in a massive way, like it hasn't been since the first Trump administration, which, by the way, if Donald Trump was still in office beyond 2020, I believe that there would have been a treaty between Israel and Saudi Arabia. That was at the doorstep. And that will be historic in a whole lot of ways. And it has prophetic implications as well. And we'll discuss that. If you are on the Hezbollah side and the Lebanon side, you're breathing a sigh of relief, because the boot is off your neck finally if you're Hezbollah. They were begging for a ceasefire. They've been hurt so badly, folks. Look, they launched this, again, unilaterally and preemptively, launched this without provocation against Israel on October 8th, this war, this great northern war. And they did it the day after the October 7th massacre. And here's a big L for you if you're Hezbollah. Hezbollah vowed that they would stay in the fight against Israel until Israel pulled out of Gaza. So much for that, because Israel's still in Gaza and still pounding Hamas, and Hezbollah is begging for a ceasefire. So Hezbollah broke its word to its brothers in Hamas by agreeing to this ceasefire. But number two, this is not brain surgery. Look, September 17th, mark it on your calendars. September 17th, 2024 was the seminal date in this war. Yes, October 8th, 2023 is when it began, but nearly a year later, after almost a year of tit for tat, where Hezbollah fired 8,000 rockets, I believe, and various projectiles at Israel over that span of time, nearly a year, and Israel responded at times quite forcefully with airstrikes. It was a tit for tat type situation. And we were at the point where Hezbollah was actually intensifying its attacks against Israel until September 17th. Folks, that's when it all changed. And that was the date of Operation Exploding Pager, as we call it. You know by now the details. One of the most daring intelligence operations in the history of the Middle East and Israeli history, where thousands of Hezbollah jihadis, their pagers blew up in their pockets or in their hands, in their faces. Thousands of them were put out of action. A few hundred were killed. Then the following day, same deal with walkie-talkies. More Hezbollah terrorists taken out of commission or killed. This was massive. It sent the group into a massive spiral of disarray. Israel followed up with massive airstrikes. And then that Friday, that Friday, the Radwan Force, the elite military unit of Hezbollah, wiped out in Beirut. A week later, Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah killed the top Hezbollah leader. A week after that, his replacement killed Safi ad-Din. And then in between, Israel invades Lebanon on the ground, creates a massive buffer zone to the point where Israeli forces, for the first time in, gosh, I don't know how long, in over 20 years, 25 years, have reached the Litani River in Lebanon. That's 18 miles north of the Israel-Lebanon border. So the IDF has cleared a path in southern Lebanon, mopped up there, destroyed countless weapons depots and weapons storage facilities. And many times those storage facilities were civilian homes where Hezbollah willfully and intentionally stored weapons in civilian homes and used civilians as human shields. I say all that to say Israel has made incredible, incredible strides, obviously, over the past 2 months plus. And Hezbollah has taken bitter, bitter blows that have left them licking their wounds and at this point begging for mercy. And Israel has changed the game in the north if Israel keeps the pressure on. And we're going to get into the particulars of the deal in a second. And is this a message to Iran? And this makes Iran look even weaker, that its main proxy, its crown jewel, Hezbollah, is begging for a ceasefire, which again, I'm coming to you, let's see, 4:13 p.m. Central Time here in Texas. This ceasefire will take effect in a few hours, 4 a.m. Israel time and Lebanon time. But again, before we get on and break this down more, we want to get into the specifics. The 60-day ceasefire deal, I want to break it down more. But before we do, I want you to remember that perhaps the greatest, and look, continue to send along your opinion on whether this is the right thing to do. Folks, I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. I'm just saying this is the thinking on both sides. I laid out the 3 reasons that Israel would take this step. And I laid out why Hezbollah is desperate for this step, because Hezbollah is not getting any stronger. They've been in disarray for over 2 months, and Israel has kept the pressure up. So if you're Hezbollah, it's breathing room. So this, I just laid out for you over the past few minutes, the motivations for both sides. But what do you think? Is this wise? I got to say, there's a big part of me that says, Israel, keep the pressure on. Don't take your boot off. But Bibi says we've already struck heavy enough blows that we're able to do this. I'm going to quote from him directly, actually. And what is Hezbollah saying about this as well? But remember, the biggest beneficiaries of this, I think, in a strange sense, Hezbollah, I hate to say it, in that they get rest and an opportunity to regroup to the degree that they can. They've been so battered, they have no leadership left. But the residents of the north, those 70 to 80,000 Israelis in northern Israel who were forced from their homes. Can you imagine this, ladies and gentlemen? For over 13, nearly 14 months, you had tens of thousands of residents of northern Israel scattered throughout the country, refugees in their own land. Hey, I was in Israel in February, and I was in Tiberias in a hotel there on the Sea of Galilee, and 90% of the people staying in the hotel were from Metula. That's a beautiful town right on the Israel-Lebanon border. And they said to me, Eric, look, we've been staying here for 4 months. We can't return home. The one guy I interviewed said, my home's been destroyed by Hezbollah rockets, and we can't go home. So we're refugees in our own land, living out of suitcases and living here in a hotel. Folks, that extended to nearly 14 months of living like that for the residents of northern Israel. And now it appears they'll be able to return home if they're willing, if they're not spooked and they're not saying, wow, because Hezbollah had every intention of carrying out an October 7th style massacre in the north. But now Israel has broken that up and exposed it, thank God. So will the people of the north finally feel comfortable returning home? Folks, I have to tell you, if they do, that would be a boon for the Israeli economy at a time when it's desperately needed. Imagine this. Northern Israel, look, Israel's the size of the state of New Jersey. To have an entire large productive region of such a small country shut down for nearly 14 months, not to mention in the south, the areas along the Gaza border also shut down. It's an economic nightmare. And then the tourism industry, which is such a driving force behind Israel's economy, also effectively shut down since October 7th for nearly 14 months. Israel's economy is having some hard times right now, and in particular, small businesses. Now, I'm asked all the time here in the comments, Eric, how can I help? Well, one way, and how can I fulfill that biblical mandate laid out in the book of Genesis, chapter 12, verse 3. One way you can do that is to support Israeli businesses and small businesses. Our partner for today's live stream, you know them well, our dear friends at Artza, artzabox.com. It's artzabox.com, an Israeli small business, which is getting to be a big business because they're having great success, and they're having great success for a reason. This is an awesome product. The Artza box comes to your doorstep straight from the Holy Land, bearing incredible handcrafted gifts. The sights, the sounds, the smells of Israel, made in Israel by Israeli businesses and artisans. It doesn't get much better. Folks, this is high quality stuff. And if you can't get to Israel right now, many of us can't, flights being canceled because of the war, etc. Or if you've never been to Israel, it's on your bucket list. How about bringing Israel to your house with an Artza Box subscription? Again, it is artzabox.com. Use a discount code Watchman. That's MAN, Watchman, for a 10% discount off your Artza Box subscription. Great company owned by a brave man who is serving right now in the Israel Defense Forces reserves, protecting his country. So blessing Israel is right now blessing, part of that's blessing Israel's economy, no doubt. And again, these are high quality products delivered to your doorstep. This month's offer is a Christmas themed box. So you get materials handmade in Bethlehem, etc., Nazareth. These are special products made in the Holy Land. Again, artzabox.com, and the discount code is Watchman. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. Right in time, by the way, for the Christmas shopping season. Black Friday is here. Hard to believe. The big shopping day. Hanukkah is right around the corner. Perfect time for that Artza Box subscription. And you help support and bless the people of Israel. Perfect match, in my view. Let's get to the parameters and some of the guidelines of this ceasefire. Here we go. Some of the specifics. 1 second. I'm going to pull this up. I do not want to misquote here. And by the way, Israel, in the title, you see Israel pounds Beirut. Israel, in the run-up, and this happens a lot before the ceasefire takes effect between Israel and its enemies. Over the years, we've seen this. Both sides try to get their final licks in, so to speak. Israel hit 20 sites in Beirut within 2 minutes today. Today, Tuesday, November 26th. IDF troops reached Lebanon's Litani River, as I mentioned a minute ago, for the first time since 2000. So Israel is, in the run-up to the ceasefire, laying down the gauntlet and saying, look, just a reminder, now we've reached the Litani River, an incredible accomplishment, and we just pounded Beirut again. Hezbollah, you are weak and you are defeated. That's what Israel's saying. Hezbollah, on the other hand, is declaring victory, as they always do, as all these terror groups do. They've been pounded without mercy, yet they'll declare victory. This is par for the course, propaganda. But to reach the Litani River is a major deal. And to strike yet again in Beirut, lightning strikes in a 2-minute span. Israel once again flexing its muscle and showing its might to Hezbollah. And again, this is the kind of operation or kind of operations that make Hezbollah beg for mercy. That's what we're seeing right now. Some specifics of the ceasefire. What is in this U.S. brokered, the U.S. had a hand in this, Israel-Hezbollah deal? It would end the fighting on the northern front. And folks, I'm reading this straight from my phone. Here's some of the specifics. It calls for an initial 2-month ceasefire during which Israeli forces would withdraw from Lebanon over a 60-day period, and Hezbollah would end its armed presence south of the Litani River, which I just mentioned. That's about 18 miles from the Israel-Lebanon border. And that was the initial goal, which frankly seemed unattainable. This tells you how Israel is in a very favorable position and has all the leverage over Hezbollah. When this war started, Israel was saying, look, we want Hezbollah needs to be driven beyond the Litani River. And I said, there's no way you can do that short of a ground invasion, number one. And number two, Hezbollah will never, ever agree to that. Well, two things. Israel commenced with the ground invasion and they unleashed hell. And also Hezbollah is now agreeing to it. That shows you how weakened they are, something they would never agree to. Look, Hezbollah spent decades building up its presence south of the Litani River and pushing up against the Israeli border. Now, for them to agree to this, to me, that's a sign of complete submission. As Israeli forces withdraw from southern Lebanon, here's more about the specifics. The Lebanese army will deploy thousands of soldiers into these vacated areas alongside the UN observer force that is already in place. That's where I have a problem, because the UN observer force, quote unquote, has been an absolute joke and a debacle. And that's an understatement. And the Lebanese army is weaker than Hezbollah. Well, now there's a good chance the Lebanese army actually has the upper hand on Hezbollah after Hezbollah has been smashed so badly. But the Lebanese army is not dependable, nor clearly is the UN. So don't be surprised if you see some Israeli incursions over the next few months to set things straight. According to Israel's Channel 12 news network, there is no intention for Israel to set up a buffer area inside Lebanon, which is interesting. But Lebanese, here's the key point I just mentioned. Lebanese civilians who've been evacuated from southern Lebanon will be allowed to return to their homes in the southern Lebanon villages and towns they evacuated. And the plan, of course, is for Israelis in northern Israel to return home as well. Lebanon has committed not Hezbollah, the central government of Lebanon. Yes, there is one, although it doesn't seem like it. They have committed as part of this deal to overseeing all arms purchases and arms production in the country to ensure that nothing reaches Hezbollah. Again, I don't have faith in the Lebanese federal government, the Lebanese armed forces, or the UN. I'm sorry. I don't have faith. No, I'm not sorry. Nor should I be. I don't have faith because they have a proven track record of abject failure and weakness. Hezbollah for years has been smuggling in vast stockpiles of weapons from Iran and setting up missile production factories. Israel demanded further guarantees to ensure that Hezbollah's weapons were removed from the border area. And now does this make the topic of yesterday's live stream, even more relevant? And I said this yesterday. And by the way, if you missed yesterday's live stream or any of our live streams, hey, be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. And they're all in our archives as well under newscast or right under videos. But yesterday we talked about the Israeli Air Force hitting these top secret Iranian smuggling routes leading from Iran through Syria into Lebanon. So clearly Israel knew this ceasefire was at foot and ready to take effect. And Israel saying, okay, we need to make sure that Hezbollah can't rearm. We don't really trust the Lebanese army, the Lebanese federal government, or the UN either. So we are going to hit the smuggling routes and make it a lot more difficult for Hezbollah to rearm. So Israel did exactly that yesterday. Now, a side note to this deal, Israel reserves the right to strike. If there's any threats emanating from southern Lebanon, from Hezbollah, Israel, again, reserves the right to fight and to go back in and to smash Hezbollah, at least probably heavy airstrikes. Interesting. Apparently, France had a part in this, which is not encouraging. France, which had pressured Israel relentlessly over the years. Ground forces will eventually withdraw. Those are the immediate parameters. So what do you think? Everyone, what do you think? I can't see the chat right now. I don't, but I will in a minute. But what are you guys all saying? You guys and gals all saying? What are your thoughts on this ceasefire? Does one side get the better of it? My take is I'm wary of it. You know, I talked to Colonel Richard Kemp yesterday, who was a foremost defender of Israel. He was the commander of all British forces in Afghanistan. He was on my nightly show, Stakelbeck Tonight. Remember, if you love the YouTube channel, you'll love our nightly TV show on TBN every weeknight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But Richard Kemp said, and he's a great friend of Israel, obviously a military man. He said, I don't know about the ceasefire. I think Israel should keep the pressure on. Now, here's what Benjamin Netanyahu said. Here's his reasoning. And I get there's different dynamics. And if you missed this in the beginning, I laid out where Israel's coming from here, their line of thinking, and Hezbollah's line of thinking to agree to this. Here's what Benjamin Netanyahu said. I'm just going to pull this up 1 second. Here we go. Bibi spoke today because, look, some on his right flank are not happy about this. They're saying, why are we letting up? Yes, it's undeniable that we've accomplished a lot, and Hezbollah is a shell of what it was, but man, we could hit them even more and keep the pressure on and make them. Hezbollah was such a formidable foe, and now we've got them really on the ropes. Why let up? Here's what Bibi said. He said Hezbollah, quote, is not the same fighting force as before. We've sent it back decades. That seems correct, I have to say. He listed Israel's achievements, and he said, we are determined to do everything necessary in order to prevent Iran from attaining a nuclear weapon. More on that in a minute. He said he promises to complete the elimination of Hamas in Gaza and bring the hostages home and make sure Gaza never again serves as a territory from which to threaten Israel. He's on his way there too. Netanyahu says Israel has killed around 20,000 terrorists in Gaza since October 7th. He warned Syria. He warned Assad that he's playing with fire. Can you say Isaiah 17, which we discussed yesterday, the prophetic implications? And again, he said that Hezbollah is essentially a shell of itself. We have attacked strategic sites across Lebanon and brought down dozens of terror towers in Tahrir, which is in the southern suburbs of Beirut. That's the Hezbollah stronghold outside of southern Lebanon. So Bibi says, look, we've struck heavy blows against Iran's ring of fire. It's unraveling before our eyes. It will never be the same. But did you catch the key takeaway there? We will never allow Iran to go nuclear. Now, we've been discussing this over the past several weeks here on the live stream. The Iranian regime, and by extension, its nuclear weapons program, have never been more vulnerable than they are right now. Again, the ring of fire smashed. Hezbollah reeling, a shell of itself, still dangerous, but not what it was. Hamas in its death throes, a ragtag guerrilla bunch at this point. They were the two main players in that ring of fire, and they were the two main deterrents to Israel striking Iran's nuclear weapons facilities. Israel doesn't have to worry about that anymore, at least for the time being or the foreseeable future. Before, if Israel said, okay, we're going to preemptively strike Iran's nuclear weapons facilities, they knew that the price of that would have been not only Iran firing missiles, but Hezbollah and Hamas on Israel's immediate borders, raining thousands of projectiles, missiles, drones, and rockets onto the Jewish state. They don't have that concern now with Hamas and Hezbollah. That's massive. So Iran lost its flank, its insurance policy. And then on October 26th, Israel eliminated Iran's air defense systems, including 4 Russian S-300, Russian-made S-300 missile defense batteries. Air defense batteries. So Iran is missing the ring of fire. Look, they could still activate the Houthis and the militias in Iraq and Syria, but Hamas, Hezbollah, they were the crown jewels, in particular Hezbollah. And those other groups can't activate to the degree right on Israel's borders that Hamas and Hezbollah did. So the ring of fire has unraveled. Its air defenses, which were weak to begin with, are now non-existent. I mean, there's a clear lane for Israel to strike Iran's nuclear weapons sites if it chooses to do so. And by the way, I mentioned October 26th. During that overnight attack, Israel did, as we reported here in the live stream, Israel did destroy a top secret Iranian nuclear research facility. So a precedent was set. So is Bibi saying now, okay, we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. Our ultimate goal is to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons facilities. Part of the run-up to that was to destroy Hamas and Hezbollah's capabilities, at least largely destroy them, to the point where we don't have to worry about them when we go in to hit Iran's nuclear facilities. And also, he says, we destroyed Iran's air defenses, which were weak to begin with. Now we can focus on the truly existential threat to the state of Israel and much of the world, by the way, Iran's nuclear weapons program. Is that what he's saying? Remember, Donald Trump about a month and a half ago said to Israel, if you're going to hit anything in Iran, you should probably hit the nuclear. Could this be, well, a few scenarios. Does Israel do this before Donald Trump takes office? Or does Israel wait till Trump gets in office and a strike against Iran's nuclear weapons facilities is carried out in conjunction with the United States? Or in the very least, with the tacit approval of the U.S., maybe no military assistance, but the approval and the cover by the United States. If anyone else tries to act up or UN resolutions, condemnations, all that thing, the U.S. vetoes it at the Security Council, that kind of thing. It's hard to see a scenario, as we wrap up here, it's hard to see a scenario going forward over the next 4 years where Iran is permitted to continue this nuclear weapons program. And either it's going to be taken out by force or they'll be forced to abandon it, which they've been loath to do, obviously. They've spent over 25 years on this thing. But Donald Trump's the deal maker, right? Does Donald Trump basically have a gun to the Ayatollah's head and saying, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, we're just going to destroy the nuclear weapons facilities? Again, Iran really has no leverage right now. The only leverage Iran has was given to it and gift wrapped to it by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Well, that's about to end come January 20th. Interesting times. I mentioned Stakelbeck tonight. Richard Kemp was on last night. Tonight on the show, General Michael Flynn joins me. And we're talking about all of this and more. Again, that's Stakelbeck tonight on TBN, the world's largest Christian television network. Watch it on your cable provider. You can watch online, tbn.org. General Michael Flynn with me tonight on the Stakelbeck Tonight show, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. Don't miss that, and don't miss us right here back with you tomorrow with another live stream, and we'll unpack this more. I'm sure there'll be a lot of developments over the next 24 hours. Does this hold up, this ceasefire? I guess that's a big question, right? And I mentioned at the top, we didn't get a chance to get into it today, but a Saudi normalization deal. Israel, Saudi Arabia, prophetic implications all over the place there that we want to talk about tomorrow. Until then, keep it all in prayer. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.